I don't know if I'll get up today. I don't know if I'll give one single today. My whole outlook is sunken gray, and I have no idea why I woke up this way. Got my phone in my right hand, my books on the nightstand. If I unlock and I app pop, I'm stuck there, I'm a dead man. So Lord, give me the strength to please read one page. If it works in any way, I'll move on to the next thing. Oh dear, I got my socks on, I'm coming up.
Welcome to Positively Undefeated. This is a podcast that talks about the day-to-day struggle ordinary people have over their demons and how each day they remain positively undefeated. We share ideas and ways that you can empower yourself to remain strong so that you can embrace the journey of living. Okay, welcome to Positively Undefeated. I'm Burl Stricker, your host. If you guys haven't had a chance, go to our website, evenoneless.com. There's a few things that are going on with us. Number one, we got a new system. It's called NeuroOptimal. It's Neurofeedback. It's a great tool. It's a great tool for help training your brain. It's a great tool for really for you mentally to work out, for you mentally to like focus, work on those things. That's what this system does. And we have that available here. And so if you'd like to try it, go to our website, evenoneless.com. It's a great asset for here in Western Oklahoma. There isn't another place that does it anywhere near here. But really, it's painless. It's non-invasive. It's really easy. You hook up to it. You listen to some music, and really, it just helps you to train your brain to focus. So anyway, great. If you have a chance, give us a call, and we'd be happy to set it up for you. And we're here again with Elliot. What's up, Elliot?
Well, how's it going, Burl? It's
good.
Pleasure to be back here. I'm honored to keep coming back and being on your show.
Well,
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you doing it. I'm pretty excited about you tried the neurofeedback and again, it's not some magic pill. It's, the goal is, how did you feel overall afterwards? Were you still, or how were you feeling?
So I went into it, and I mean, I have a lot of things going on in my mind right now. So there was a lot of distractions, but going through it, I got to think of it in a different way. Yeah. Like I never thought of it the way that I did watching it. I don't know. Maybe I guess it was just more clarity. Yeah.
Did the music interrupt or stop while you were doing it?
The music actually, I mean, I was like you were saying, I was in kind of like a meditative state. So I was really feeling the music so I think everything, the way that it's set up, is absolutely perfect. I think it'll do the job without even you trying to do it. I mean, it's working without you even knowing it.
Well, I tried this, Elliot, I probably told you this before for people listening, where in the world I came up with this idea. First of all, it's for a nonprofit, Even One Less. And, this system is, it's got a lot under the hood. I mean, it really does. And I love it because I always am looking for, solutions that are not, this doesn't come in a pill form. It doesn't create, have to have a diagnosis. It doesn't, I feel like those things are great. I think that counseling, for example, is great. I think this is another tool in your tool belt that you can use that, again, you can do that as many times as you want. And that's what I love about it. I know when I did it this weekend, and I just felt calmer when I was done, and I know that's not everybody's experience, but, when I did it, it just helped me focus a little bit more. They say that you need an average of 10 sessions really to experience the benefit of it. It doesn't again, there's no diagnosis involved. This is not a medical model. But what it does do, it helps you sleep better. It helps you focus more. It helps you, like if you're dealing with anxiety, and you were talking about kind of dealing with some anxiety this morning when you got on it. Yeah. And so I think those things, that's the goal, is it helps reduce those things without taking some kind of medication or drug or, any of that. And so I'm very excited about what it can do. You're the second person to try it. So
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you trying and being willing to, but we're really going to try to get it out there. I think that there's some, opportunities to help people. And, of course, we're also looking at it as a way to, make some money with our not-for-profit and be able to bring in some money. I like, of course, everybody likes the donation. I'd love it if somebody called up and said, Burl, I want to give you $1 million for your suicide awareness.
Right.
Not for profit, but that's not realistic. What's realistic is that we don't want to really be out there begging for money.
Right.
What we want to do is be able to provide services that really can make a difference.
Yes.
And so, when I looked it up to see who else does this, the closest one was either Denver, Colorado, or like the Dallas, Fort Worth area.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, man, what a great thing to bring to Western Oklahoma. And it's great for kids.
And it is absolutely, and it's absolutely like, now that I watched it the first time, now I know kind of what to expect and kind of what to expect for the next time.
Yeah.
But so I think that like the 10 sessions, you start paying more attention each session. I know like something for me, like I have to keep doing it repetitively before I understand it. So
yeah, I think it's a great tool. And I want to encourage anybody listening, if you're in our area and you would love to do it, I'd love to hook you up and like I said, you can pretty much just sit there and listen to music. That's all you have to do. There's no really requirement besides that. So if you get a chance, go to our website. There, my number's on the website. And so you can give me a call and we'll try to set that up. Elliot, so how's life treating you since last time we talked last week?
Yeah. It's, I can't believe it's only been a week. There's been a lot of things that's been happening the past week, and a lot of it is that I had a hard time controlling my attitude, my temper, especially when I was in a lot of pain, and it just seemed like it just kept getting worse. So I was just making more things where I was making everything difficult in my life because I didn't know where I was.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what do you mean you're making everything difficult? Explain that.
Okay, so I overthink a lot of things. I actually overthink everything.
Yeah.
Somebody said one time that a normal human being has 30,000 thoughts go through their mind a day. 30,000 different thoughts go through their mind a day. For me, I have 5 thoughts that go around my mind 30,000 times a day. And it's always the same. I can never get out of that. For some reason, like I get into that and I just go into the whole pity party and all that stuff. And it just, I'm not aware of the situation I'm in. I'm aware of the situation I'm in, but I'm not aware of the location. So like I don't know where I'm at when I'm going through these feelings. And if I don't know where I'm at going through these feelings, I'm not going to even touch to figure out what's going on with it.
Yeah.
So I have to really look what is the biggest thing that's distracting me right now? And it's my selfish, self-centered mind that I have going on, because all I can think about is my pain, and I have a hard time getting like I think when I'm in pain, I don't think people are hearing me.
Mm-hmm.
They're listening to me, but they're not hearing. I feel like they're not understanding, but maybe it's me that doesn't understand the pain that I'm in.
Yeah. I'm curious, Elliot, as you're talking and as we talked in the past, do you think that a lot of your, let's say, troubles or problems or whatever, do you think it stems from your diagnosis of MS, or was this already there before the diagnosis of MS? Do you think the MS created some of these things that are going on, or do you think that was already there?
Oh, that's a good question. And I was discussing this with another friend. Okay, so like before my diagnosis, there was always something wrong with me. I could never figure out what it was. And then of course that was making me frustrated. was making my mom frustrated. That was making me frustrated. I mean, you could just see the frustration. So by the time that I got the diagnosis that it was multiple sclerosis, I've already lived with it for so many years. And so we were thinking about it. And now that I'm pretty sure that coming up with like this, they're having a hard time differentiating head trauma from a blunt force to actually just going through trauma, because it has kind of the same effect. So if you break down the word disease, okay, and it's dis-ease. So you're like, you're not at easy, you're at dis-ease. So like when we go through struggling situations and stuff, we're not at ease. We're agitated, we're frustrated, and we're going 90 miles an hour. People start having like the brain hemorrhages and stuff like that. I mean, this is how serious that trauma can be. I mean, because it can cause so many things mentally.
Well, yeah, but when you're talking about the trauma, again, is it trauma from the MS diagnosis and the side effects of that? Or do you feel like it was trauma before that?
Okay, so the trauma started before I got the diagnosis, because there was something that was going on with me. I didn't know what it was. I hated what was going on with me. So then after I get the diagnosis, and of course it was the MS diagnosis, I mean, that just absolutely took everything from me, because knowing that there was something always wrong with me, but then finally getting the knowledge of what actually it is, and it's something that's just not in my head.
Yeah.
That, I think that is probably where the trauma came in. Is growing up with it. That was the start of the trauma. And like I said, there's always something wrong with me. And then after I get the diagnosis, the first thing that I think of is the negative. And I'm always thinking of like all the things that I'm not going to be able to do. So then that shut me down so bad mentally. And then that's why I was in the wheelchair for the 2 years. And it took me over 5 years to like get back up and being able to do things physically. Mentally, I wasn't there. I've never really been there mentally, because I've been out of it so long physically. Yeah. It was hard for me to get into it mentally.
Yeah. Well, what do you think, as I'm listening to you talk, what do you think what do you hope comes out of your life? Like, you have a lot of years left, and
let's hope so.
And I'm curious what you hope to get out of your remaining years left, because how does the future look to you?
The future looks to me like what I'm doing right now. And what I'm doing right now is I'm getting out of myself. I'm going out and I'm talking to people. I'm helping people with the situations that I have been through. And then watching somebody experience that for the first time, when you sit down and you talk with them and they finally have that self-appreciation for themselves, they got that smile, their eyes, ain't no better feeling than that. And that's what keeps me going is helping somebody else experience this great life. There's a lot of complications, but it's a great life. Yeah. And a lot of it is, like I said, it was the disease. Like, I got that, so I was stressed out. And when I was stressed out, I get angry, your blood pressure raises, all those things. You can physically hurt yourself just by being agitated or whatever for so long. And I think once somebody showed me how to ease that pain, he showed me how to start to ease that pain, and I've been on that ever since, because it just keeps me going. Like I said, what keeps me going is helping other people, watching somebody else go off of, listen to what you say, then it sparks a direct attack, or they feel like they're not alone. They feel like,
well, I look at, whenever I've talked to you, we talked several times and we've known each other now for a couple of years, and I think it's a couple of years. That's what it feels like. But anyway, and really I have the overall same impression that when I first met you, is that, man, there's lots of opportunity for you to really help somebody and be an inspiration to somebody, because, I think that even though we've talked about the diagnosis of MS, that it's definitely, a debilitating and progressive, illness, but I think there's so much you can offer to other people to be able to, inspiration from how you are dealing with it, how you're, I think that even if you had like a daily journal, that it just shows that there's all kinds of things going on, but I think that you can be inspirational to the people. And and I think that it reminds me of kind of like the saying is like, we all feel like we're special and different, even in our problems.
Mm-hmm.
But I know I could see why you would feel that way. Like you're special, because how many people do I know that have MS? I've known some.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work in healthcare. I worked in nursing homes forever, and we had people in there with MS, so I have some experience with that. I had a friend that was a CPA of mine that, he did, my taxes and whatever, and he had MS. And so I have some experience there. But it's definitely, unique to you. There's not too many people I know currently that have it,
right,
that I talk to on a regular basis. And so you are unique, but I feel like also it's easy for me to say that too. Like, I'm unique because I'm dealing with this problem, X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But the truth is, we're not really that unique. We all have our own deal.
It's all similar. Yes.
We all have our own problems, but yet how we deal with those problems is really the same. We are not how we deal with them, but the fact that we all have problems that are different. We all have problems. We all are struggling in different ways. And yet there seems to be this continuity there that it's easy to forget, or easy to, think I'm special because my problems or whatever. But the truth is, we're all struggling.
Right.
And I think that the fact that they can relate to you despite them not having MS,
right,
but yet they're still struggling. They're struggling. And I can see how it's easy for people to judge you,
mm-hmm,
or vice versa, you to judge them. Well, if they had MS, they wouldn't be as good, as bad as whatever. But you still see that that's not productive, in any means.
And that's really why I want to do this. What I'm doing is because it's just a mindset. It's about changing your mindset. Like, I have MS, but MS doesn't have me.
Yeah.
I whenever I walk outside, I'm not wearing a sign that says I have MS, feel sorry for me. Right. Or I'm not wearing a sign that says, like, I have to use a walker. I'm 42 years old, and I'm not looking for that kind of attention, but sometimes I feel like I'm begging for that kind of attention.
Right.
But that's my perception of what other people are thinking.
Yeah.
So for me, I have to change my mind. And then, like, when I wake up in the morning, I have to be honest with myself. I have to have hope. The only way that I have hope is by giving it away. So I can't stay in my bedroom and give away hope. I have to go out in the public and give away hope. And then I got to have faith. I got to believe that God has got me no matter what.
Yeah.
And if I do that and then realize, like we were talking about earlier, what I was talking about it earlier with a friend that says, why does it say that, we know how to handle situations which used to baffle us, and it doesn't say I know how to handle situations that used to baffle us. And it's because it's a we problem. It's not just a you problem. We all have the same problem. Sometimes it's in different severities. I mean, you can't compare your pain to my pain and say, like, I cannot believe how you're doing this.
Right.
But then you tell me your pain, and I'll be like, I don't know how you're doing it. It would be impossible for me to do that.
Yeah.
But we're doing it.
Yeah.
And it's just all about that mindset. And
Right.
I kind of just lost where I was going with that.
Well, I think that it's also, I think about, I used to live in self-pity, and I used to constantly live in that place.
Yeah.
And what that self-pity looked like for me is that I thought about dying constantly. I just thought about, I don't want to live. I'd say stuff like, excuse my language, but fuck my life.
Yeah.
In my head. I would say those things. And it would be like a record player just constantly rotating and saying the same things over and over again in my head.
Right.
And that came from this place of self-pity, which maybe it comes from, I think that can come from all kinds of different places. I think it can come from despair. I think it can come from depression. But part of that, when you talked about the hope, it's like, I know now that if I have that loop going on inside of my head where I'm thinking these negative thoughts, that loop is, a indication of something bigger going on.
Yes.
I know that I cannot live in that constant loop of negativity in my life, because if I do, then it's just going to, take me down.
Right.
Ultimately. And so I think one of the things I've learned over, the last couple of years is I have to recognize that quickly. And I really have to do something about it. And I think you said it. It's like, I think, I used to say, well, what do you do about it? But I think the answer really foremost is get outside yourself and try to help other people.
Right.
Try to focus on other people.
Yes.
One of the things that really hit me right from the beginning, you were talking about, the big book. And, one of the things that hit me almost immediately was not to pray for myself, but pray for other people.
Yes.
And I never really heard that concept before.
Okay.
But I think that idea, that's what if somebody asks me my opinion about stuff, that's one of the things I tell them is that your prayer life, as mechanical as it can be. And I've said it many times that my prayer life many times is very mechanical. It might be just reading the Lord's Prayer or reading. Right. And to be honest with you, I don't even, I'm not a big fan of the Lord's Prayer. I never have been. But what I've realized is that, man, I can just take a prayer like the Lord's Prayer and just repeat it, at times when it feels mechanical. But part of that is that I'm really I want to pray for other people. I want to stay out of that self-focused, because, I do know my problems, and it's like being in that self-pity cycle, it's just no good. But right. I found that if I'm praying for, my friends and people that I know and my family, that gets me out of that. And if I make that a daily habit, that seems to make a huge difference.
When I look at that, when you're talking about that and you become aware of the situation, what's that?
We're coughing.
Oh, yeah, sure.
People can hear us getting more coffee.
Okay. Okay. What was I saying? I can't remember exactly what it was.
We're just like praying, getting outside yourself and,
Oh, okay. So when we get outside of ourselves and we start praying for other people, we're starting to accept, and this is really weird. Without knowing it, we're starting to accept a new habit, a new responsibility.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of with me, with the trauma and everything that I've gone through, and every person's like this. We operate off of learned behavior. So from ever since we were like little kids or whatever, we were accustomed to learned behavior. So we would see what other people were doing, and we would try to mimic that. We would try to be that. Oh man. So when I'm praying for somebody else, I'm becoming more acceptance of what's going on, in my life. I'm starting to take an inner look at myself when I start praying for other people, because when I pray for other people, I'm praying for everything that I want. And, then that makes me aware of the things that I need to change in my life.
Yeah.
And I think, and like I said, it all comes back down to the mindset. I had a friend. She came up to me and she said, well, I heard you had MS and I heard you had all these things. And she was asking me some questions about it. And she was asking me, like, what does it do to you mentally? And I said, mentally, it's one of the worst things ever. She goes, well, I had a friend. She was 37 when she was diagnosed. She had 3 kids, a house, a husband. She had all these great careers and everything. She killed herself at 39 because the pain was too much. It wasn't the physical pain, but it was just the mental pain.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I had the 12-step recovery under my belt, so I knew what I had to do for myself. And then by working through the steps, I find out that it's not so much the actual physical pain, it's the mental pain. And I'm able to change in my mind the mental pain. I'm able to understand the mental pain because I don't know, like when I said when I was in the hospital, and then the chaplain came over and asked me like how I was doing, and I said I was in a lot of pain, and he goes, Elliot, and he goes, pain is 80% mental and 20% physical. So you have to decide what kind of pain you're in, and then go from there. And it took a long time to do. I was like, at times I never felt like I was even worth it. And then that was one of the biggest thing too, is, am I worth it?
I mean, every time I talk to you, Elliot, and I'm not just saying this because we're on a podcast or whatever, I'd say the same thing whether we're recording or not. But I think that, you have a huge opportunity to really make a difference in other people's lives. And to be a testament. One thing I've really realized is that our own testimony or our own story makes a huge difference. It's not so much the teaching and the preaching. I've come to the conclusion that those things, they have their place, teaching and preaching. But really what I've realized is what makes a difference in other people's lives, especially men to men, is hearing somebody else's story. And how they are overcome. I think about my grandfather. My grandfather had a terminal illness. And it's ironic, both of my grandfathers had a terminal illness. One found out he had cancer and he killed himself. And then my grandfather that I really grew up with and knew well, he had a terminal illness and he basically, I'll never forget, like I was in the military and he was writing me letters constantly. And he was checking on me and wanted to see how I was doing when he was sitting at home hurting and in the most miserable pain that you can imagine. And his life was like physically, his body was wasting away. But I'll never forget the impact of him constantly writing me letters and constantly checking on me. And that's something that, made a profound impact on me whenever I was young. And I think about it a lot now because I think I was like, I want to say 19 or 20 when he passed away. And the thing about it is that the one legacy that he left is that, I didn't even really fully grasp how much he was struggling and in pain and all. Of course, I knew it, but I didn't really grasp it. But what I did grasp is that was never the focus when I talked to him. It was on me and what was going on with me and, his thoughts or whatever, basically in my life. And that him making that effort in my life just really impacted me. I felt like somebody cared, somebody that really cared about me, and I think about you in that way that, man, you have this opportunity to really, through your story, to be impactful to other people. And I think that, I see it all the time that every time I'm around you, that you have that opportunity,
right,
to really focus on maybe what's going on in other people's lives. I think about like an older guy to a younger guy. I mean, think about all the wisdom there, but we all know that it's kind of like don't give advice unless asked kind of deal.
Right.
But once they ask, man, it opens this door for you to be able to so much wisdom as, kind of an elderly guy. and a younger guy.
Right.
And I think I look at this situation with you too, that man, there's so much you can give when it comes to your story and your testimony. And then I think that's amazing.
Well, like one of the biggest things while he was writing you those letters and he was saying those things to you, that was getting him out of himself and out of his pain, because he was thinking about somebody else. He was being selfless.
Yeah.
And whenever I do that, whenever I go talk to somebody or whatever, it helps me a heck of a lot more than it helps them.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's also just kind of a reassurance that, hey, I know this knowledge. I know what to do. I need to take the action. And for most of my life, I was only thinking about myself. I wasn't thinking about anybody else. And it caused me to do some pretty drastic things. And I still do some pretty drastic things now today. But I know how to respond to situations instead of reacting to situations. Because when I react to situations, I know that's me. But if I respond to a situation, I know God is helping me to reply to that.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, I think that I think really God working in our lives is, like you can't control MS.
No.
You can't control that thing.
No.
But there's
Acceptance.
so many things in our lives, even if you don't have MS, that you can't control. There's
Right.
so many.
Yes.
And part of it is like, I think there's certain things that like you take addiction, let's say when you're in an addiction, you really can't control it. You're out of control.
Mm-hmm.
It's like completely out of control. But we look at something like maybe alcohol addiction and we look at it differently, like, well, yes, you can control that. Well, no, actually they can't control it anymore. That's the whole point.
Right.
So what do? What's the answer? Well, obviously it's like admitting that they are powerless over this. But then also the part of that is admitting that you need a higher power, that you can't do it, right?
Right.
Well, I believe it's the same concept. Even with something like MS, it's like you admit that you're powerless over this and you can't do this. You need a higher power. You need somebody to do this for you, right? Even though we look at those things and say, well, you didn't do MS to yourself,
mm-hmm.
but somebody could easily say, yeah, but you did alcoholism to yourself or drug addiction. But I don't think God looks at those things the same. I think he looks at them really the same.
Right.
Is that what is the bottom line in both of those scenarios? And the bottom line is you need God.
Yes. That's completely, that's what it all comes down to.
It doesn't matter that one of them was created by whatever genetics. Right.
Yeah.
And one of them was created by maybe your own actions.
Right.
The bottom line is that you got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, the bottom line is the answer is the same. And I don't think we always look at it like that, and unfortunately, this is something that I've really started to realize is that I think you have to be real careful because, like you take the 12 steps and all that stuff, it's very simple, right? They talk about how simple it is.
It's a very simple program for complicated people.
But think about it. It's like, it's so easy for us to complicate any point of that process. And one of the areas I believe that we absolutely do complicate it is, and when it comes to God. And I think it's easy to add X, Y, and Z. If you're really let God in control, if you're really looking for the will, his will in your life, well, you got to do X, Y, and Z. Maybe it's go to church. Maybe it's read your Bible. But I don't think God works like that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those things, going to church, reading your Bible. But I do think that we have a tendency to complicate every single process of our lives because we think that sometimes, honestly, the truth is, I think that we feel like the answers are too easy.
Yes.
And what I think that God designed these things to be super easy. And it's easy to think, well, it's too easy. Will it work? And yet we complicate it, and then we wonder why the complication doesn't work.
Right.
But if you read the Bible and it talks about like faith as a child, and I think about, I have kids and I think about, man, when they're little and they're praying, they're like kneeling beside their bed and they're praying. or, they're listening to a story about Jesus and just the simplicity of it.
Right.
It's easy. And that's what happens as they grow older. One of the things that happens, it gets more complicated and more complicated and more but really the faith that saves is childlike faith.
Okay. So I was talking about this the other day with a friend, and we were talking about like the childhood faith, and then like what exactly does that mean, childhood faith? And for me, it was like, back when I was a child, what did I have a lot of when I was a child? I had a lot of imagination.
Yeah.
Right. So my faith for my childhood faith is like, I had this great imagination of how all this was going to play out. And then of course, like later on, then the circumstances didn't change, but I had to change mentally. I couldn't change physically, but I had to change mentally.
Yeah.
I had to become aware of the situation. I had to accept that I may have this, but it's not going to control me. So like, I'm an alcoholic, but alcohol doesn't control me anymore. Mm-hmm. My mind controls me. Like, yeah. I'm able to actually sit down and actually believe and think, process everything for myself. Mm-hmm. Because I've always relied on other people to do it for me. Yeah. But until I got to step outside of who I'm, somebody told me, he goes, Elliot, look at yourself in the third person. Yeah. And he goes, what would you tell somebody else if they're going through the same situation you are? Mm-hmm. And then of course, I mean, that changes your whole mindset. But I can't talk to myself out of it. I need to talk with somebody else. Yeah.
Well, I love it. You mentioned, remind me of the book you talked about earlier, and I said I had the Into the Wild. Wild at Heart.
Wild at Heart, yeah.
So if you guys for you guys listening, if you have not read that book, which it's old, it's like 20, 30 years old. Wild at Heart is a great book for men. But he talks about this, and it's something that I think that we all would benefit from realizing. It's like we look at a child and they believe in Santa Claus, they believe in the Tooth Fairy, and the thing about it is, of course, we look at it like some people look at that negatively. You're like, wow, they believe in these fairy tales, but you know what? Also, they believe they can do anything. Right. They believe they could be president of the United States. They believe they could be a ballerina. They believe, and that kind of faith is really what drives our relationship. Yes. And as we get older, and it's really through disappointments in life, we start to think we can't, I can't be president now because I've been divorced and they're going to find out about that. And it just goes on and on. Right. Or I can't be a ballerina because, you see what I'm saying?
I got size 13 shoes.
There's no Santa Claus. And for y'all listening, there is a Santa Claus, I'm sure. But, people, of course, in other words, life disappoint us. Yes. You can call it trauma. You can call it whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. But basically, life happens. And as it happens, we lose faith in anything.
Because we're not accepting of where we're at.
And the truth is that those stories, a lot of people wouldn't agree with this, but those stories of the prince and the princess and the castle and the hero and all of it, it really stems from our very unique drive that God is there and God exists and God created this thing. And so we have like this, I call it a God-sized vacuum, and we have this hole and that can only be filled by God. But, some people are so worried. Like I remember experiencing this. It's like scared to really, that God wouldn't want me to really follow my dreams. He doesn't want that. I think he absolutely does. Yeah. He wants us to have this imagination and creativity, and he wants us to follow those things because I think that God is in those things.
Yes.
He's in those creative things. He's in those creative, juices and things that flow, and he wants us to, the Bible says that basically God gives us the desires of our heart. And I think about that a lot. I think about the desires of our heart. It's like, do I really want to be a person that hurts people? No, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to hurt people. Or do I really want to be somebody who, like, you can't depend on, who's not loyal, who's not a good friend? No, I want to be a good friend,
Right.
And so many times it's like we think by acting like, let's say, the Christian way, we're acting opposite of, like, the way we're designed. That's not true. We're actually, when we do things to help other people, when we actually do things that make a difference and creative, all that stuff is God given. That's the way he designed us.
Yes.
Living in self-pity, living in, chaos, living in this, constant depression, suicidal, all of it. That's not how God designed us. And when we actually allow God to live in our life and we actually depend on him, and not in this churchy way, but this way of, like, realistic, like, hey, I need help.
Yes.
I need something.
Yes.
I think that actually we are acting exactly in God's design. I truly mean that. And I think that it's so easy to complicate it, as we're talking about.
Well, like I said, we overreact. I mean, we react to situations. I react to a lot of different situations, and it's caused more problems. So when I write down, especially like what I'm going through, I become more aware of the situation. So that way I'm able to actually be there. And it's like it says in the big book, it says that Bill Wilson, he talks about being rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence.
Yeah.
And you talk about dimensions, height, length, width. What is the fourth dimension? It's time. It's being where I'm at right now. It's being where my feet are. It's knowing that right now I'm sitting on a red couch and we're talking, and I'm aware of where I'm at.
Yeah.
Before, I was never aware of where I was at because I was always focused on my problems. I was always focused on the things that I needed to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't change. The only thing I can change is what's behind my nose. That's the only thing I can change. I can't change anybody. I can't change any of the situations or nothing on the outside. The only thing I can change is behind my nose. So when I wake up in the morning, that's the first thing that I say is I have to be honest with myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to allow this situation or this situation to bother me that much because I know that I have God.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the biggest testimony you hear a lot with churches and, Christians is you hear a lot talk about witnessing and sharing the gospel. I think the biggest way we can share the gospel and Christianity and talk about is basically our own lives, not a perfection.
Right.
In other words, God's not seeking perfection out of us.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about a real, honest, vulnerable, you living your life honestly and vulnerably. I'm always amazed by, it inspires me to hear somebody like talk about their weakness or talk about something that's going on that, like, my very first reaction sometimes is, wow, I can't believe they shared that. But then my next reaction is like, I'm very inspired by that.
Right.
The fact that, I'm struggling and I'm talking about it. And I think that those things, that vulnerability and that openness, I think that right there makes a huge difference. I don't think it's about perfect behaviors. I think, I love the way it says it, it talks about progress, not perfection.
Yeah.
I think that we want perfection out of ourselves, but God doesn't even want perfection out of ourselves.
No.
I think that, like, when you're struggling, I think that it's easy to look at it as a negative, but it can be a positive, which is, man, I'm self-aware that, man, I need God's help.
Mm-hmm.
I need something. You know what I mean? And yet we also have a tendency to think that, well, I love it. You've heard me say it before, man, but I talk about it all the time. Paul says that basically God's grace is made perfect in his weakness. And when I think about that, it's like, he had, always talk about the thorn in the flesh. Well, Paul had a thorn in the flesh,
Yes.
and that could have been MS. It could have been anything. It does not say what he had.
No.
He had eye trouble. He wanted other people's stuff. He had a coveting problem. He talked about that. We don't know what he was struggling, but he asked 3 times for God to remove it from him. And what God said is, my grace is perfected in your weakness.
Yes.
And so that gives me hope, because really how is God's grace perfected? Through my weaknesses. How is he strong in my life? And it's through my weaknesses. If I'm never weak, and you're never weak, we have no room for God.
Right.
None. And that right there is like powerful, because really it's not like I don't know. I was fixing to say it's not like he wants us weak, but actually I think he does. And I'm not talking about when we think weak, I think we have the wrong idea. Dependency, we have the wrong idea.
Yes.
It's easy to say, well, yeah, you've talked about before the codependency. Yeah, it's not great for us to be dependent on other people, but in some ways we are made to be dependent on other people.
Right.
Fellowship, unity, all that is like huge in our life. We need fellowship. We need unity. But I think it's where we're not just take, or give. It's literally this dance where we give and take and we learn. And I think that God wants unity in our life. He wants us to be unified with other people. And he wants us to have that fellowship, because I think we're designed to have that fellowship. And I think one of the greatest fellowships, one is in a marriage, but also a great way is men to other men. It's like, It's a great fellowship, and God designed that way,
We all have the same, we all go through similar situations. I mean, if I'm going through a certain situation and you're going through the same, we can find the commonality between those two, and we can figure out what their problem is. And it's usually just our way of thinking, how we approach it. And I kind of just wanted to say, you were talking about, cause it says in the Bible, it says that, the heart of a man will plan it says, the heart of a man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. And that's something that I had to come to realize, that it's more than just saying that I'm going to allow God to establish my steps, because I get so stuck that I'm going to be the head of this plan. I'm going to be the master of my journey. It's going to go my way. Then that reminds me back into, when you go back into active addiction, and you hear that drink, the man takes the drink, then the drink takes the man. And I like that aspect of it, because what it's telling me, oh man, sorry, it's got a phone call, so I got sidetracked. Yeah, man, I forgot where I was at. So the heart of the man, but the Lord establishes steps. Man, I'm losing.
Well, no, I get it. I think it's interesting, because I'm trying to look it up too, where, in the Bible, you have, what do you call them? Basically you have these examples of faith in Hebrews, and it says, it talks about these certain people like Rahab the prostitute. And, I love that, because they're the pillars of faith, but you know what? They did one thing.
Right.
They only did one thing. And it's so easy to take Rahab the prostitute. It's so easy for us to think that, man, she just lived a life of faith and she's an example. But really what Rahab the prostitute, the only thing she did was open the door. That's it.
Right.
For Israel, for their spies, right? And so when you think about that, it's like, really, maybe our whole life is based on one thing, and that's faith in Jesus, but that's it. Maybe that's the whole point behind it, is that, faith is based on one action. It's not based on this lifetime of action, but it's like, man, I had faith in this moment, when it came with God, you know. And I'm always inspired by that because it's really not a lifetime achievement. It's really one decision to have faith.
Yes.
And that one, I mean, you take the same thing with like Abraham and Isaac and offering him on the altar. That was his one thing that he did.
Right.
You know, it wasn't necessarily a lifetime of behavior. It was this one action that made a difference.
Right.
Well,
another thing I just want to say one more thing, kind of like on that topic there. There's another Bible verse that really helped me, and it's in Ezekiel 36:26. It says that I will give you a new heart and a new spirit. I will take out your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. And man, sometimes it's like really quick. Sometimes I can go right into it and believe that God is giving me this new heart. But then my ego and my pride. So like when I was talking about that, man, the man takes a drink and then the drink takes the man. So what that's like a representation of is like a guy takes it. There's a picture of a guy drinking out of a bottle, but his head is actually inside of the bottle.
Yeah.
So when the man takes the drink, then the drink takes the man. So he goes inside of the bottle. Now, when he's inside of that bottle, he only can think about himself. He's only going to think of like how he's going to get out of there. He's going into protection mode because of this, what's going on. So now when I go into a situation, I don't look at it with a closed mind, with an expectation. I walk into it with an open mind, and I'm waiting to experience something. When I'm talking with a gentleman or I'm going through these things, I want him to have the open mind. So I'm praying that I keep my open mind, so maybe that he can kind of see that too, and he can keep the open mind, and we can continue to grow from there.
I think it's great. Well, Elliot, I appreciate you being on the show today, and it's always a pleasure to have you on. And
I appreciate it.
And thank you guys for listening. Again, if you guys want to try the neurofeedback, I would love to set you up a time to do that. Just go to our website, like I was telling you, evenoneless.com. Look for the phone number or email, and you can email us or you can call me. Also, if you haven't done it, sign up for our positive text. You can do that through the website too. You'll randomly get a positive text from us. It's not invasive. You're not going to be in some group chat or anything like that. It's not annoying. And, but I encourage you guys to sign up for a positive text. And really just through the website, you can also find out, information and resources. So evenoneless.com. And again, Elliot, I appreciate you taking the time to talk, and I hope you have a great rest of your week, brother.
I appreciate it, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you for listening to Positively Undefeated. If there was something in this show that resonated with you, please share the show with your community. If you want this show delivered each Monday morning to your podcast app of choice, please subscribe or follow. And if you'd like to get a hold of Burl, please do so by going to burlstricker.com/contact.